Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is our WWE show for the week. Let's jump right into the ring with it. First up we have Stephanie McMahon and the Big Show. Goes back and forth. Stephanie slaps the shit out of Big Show and then fires him. Definitely going to see repercussions from that firing later on in the night, as if anybody couldn't have guessed that. We roll right into our first match of the night. Dolph Ziggler versus Damien Sandow. A rematch from the Battleground pay-per-view. I actually like this one better. Sandow showed more in this match, was a little bit more aggressive. Ziggler gets a win. They continue the trend of burying the Money in the Bank Championship winner, something that I've always found a little bit weird. I thought you should make these guys look strong, so it is a real threat when they cash in. But it is what it is. I don't run the show. That's how they decide to do it every year. Next up, we had our mandatory Divas match. We had Alicia Fox, Oksana, and Rosa Mendez versus the Total Diva team of Eva Marie, JoJo, and Natalya Neidhart. The Total Diva team wins. JoJo doesn't get tagged in. I have a strong feeling that this was more taped for Total Divas, so we can have a little bit of a backstage drama as to why Eva Marie didn't tag in JoJo. Just an opinion I have. I totally believe that Vince would use TV time on this show to promote another show. Now next I'm going to consolidate 4 segments into one just so we can save a little bit of time. Very packed show this week. We have Brad Maddox coming out announcing that Randy Orton will face Daniel Bryan in Hell in the Cell, and they will have one of 3 Hall of Famers as their special guest referee. Booker T, who got to say his piece, why he should be the ref. Bob Backlund, who knows what he says still. And Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, who played up the idea that he's best friends with Triple H, yet he trained Daniel Bryan, but he'll be impartial. HBK wins in almost surprising fashion, getting more than 60% of the vote. The surprise was that Backlund actually got 30% of the vote. I think there was a lot of internet fans that went on the app and were going to vote for Backlund just to have that monkey wrench. Not like it wouldn't have mattered. The WWE would have done what they wanted and said the vote went the way they wanted to anyway. But I thought it was I think I could see where it's going to go with this. Somehow Shawn Michaels is going to be the reason that Daniel Bryan doesn't win. Just a gut feeling. Then next we had Los Matadors versus Jinder Mahal and Drew McIntyre representing 3MB. I might be the only one saying this, but I'm enjoying Los Matadors. I thought the only thing that Epico and Primo were missing was personality, and they definitely have fully accepted this gimmick and this 90s style throwback gimmick and injected that into their personalities. I think it's awesome what they're doing. I don't know how long the shelf life is on it, but it's fun while it's there. And that's something that really kind of is missing a lot in wrestling, is some of the fun. We get some of the forced fun with guys like Santino doing their comedy segments, where we could just have regular fun matches. Speaking of some fun guys, we had the Paul Heyman guys. Paul Heyman, Ryback, and Curtis Axel cutting a little promo, which brings out CM Punk, brings out R-Truth, right into an impromptu match, Punk and Truth versus the Heyman guys. Good guys pick up the win. Punk and Truth leave with the win, as we could have predicted easily. I'm kind of over the CM Punk, Paul Heyman struggle. Not that it's bad, not that they're giving bad promos. Their promos are excellent, constantly 2 of the best of the night. But I'd like to see Heyman focus his team, his group elsewhere, maybe tag team title run or something to that effect. And CM Punk focus himself somewhere else as well. Just my opinion. Now speaking of that, going from a guy with a lot of focus to a guy who was hard to focus on anything he said, last week we asked as the question of the week, what's your opinion on the Ultimate Warrior? We got a couple answers from our friends. First is from Sonic Rules 94. To answer the question of the week, I think the Warrior was good and could have been the face of the company if not for him being a horrible person. I guess I should say I like the Ultimate Warrior, but I really don't like Jim Hellwig. Solid opinion on that. Next is from our friend Yellow Lion 3250. Warrior was okay, but remember he was not hot at the time and got an endorsement from Hogan. But ego, the fact that he was still a little green and made him look bad. The whole holding Vince up for money for the pay-per-view, but because he got the nod from the Hogan, that puts him in the Hall of Fame. Because as we all know, Hogan puts nobody over, but Warrior ruined one of the best rivalries because he wouldn't put Rick Rude over and let him win the world title at SummerSlam. Then he could have won it back on Saturday night's main event. Some good opinions. It seems to be the opinion is basically the same as mine. Warrior was a good gimmick at the right time. He struck, he struck lightning in a bottle. However, Warrior, much like Goldberg, took himself a little bit too seriously, and when it was time for Warrior to job to other people or do some things that Warrior didn't want to do, his ego took over and it kind of ruined his legacy. No pun intended. Guys like Sting, The Undertaker, even Hulk Hogan to a degree, Ric Flair, their legacy is cemented no matter who they beat or whoever they lose to. You don't really remember the wins and losses, you just remember the great matches. And unfortunately, guys like Warrior and Goldberg never got that it wasn't about wins and losses. And, my opinion, I think he will make the Hall of Fame. I think he's deserving of that, but he's not someone I could care about. If he came back tomorrow, in his prime even, I wouldn't care. Coming off of that, speaking of the Hall of Fame, two surefire Hall of Famers, at least some would think. Our question of the week from this week was something that I ripped from Twitter that came out of my mind the other day when I was bored watching the pay-per-view. Who had the better career, Macho Man Randy Savage or Triple H Hunter Hearst Helmsley? Let us know what you think. Hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on Twitter. Put it down where? Down there in the comments. Now, coming off of that, we had one of Hunter Hearst Helmsley's lackeys, kind of, Randy Orton versus Kofi Kingston. Reminds us back to the 2009 feud they had, which is the highlight of Kofi's career so far. It's a shame that they never got behind this guy and gave him the push that he probably deserves. He really connects with the fans, and he has a solid in-ring talent, a solid charisma that everybody seems to like him. Along with the other guy that came out after Orton won, Daniel Bryan, and attacked Randy Orton in a move that was very reminiscent of something Stone Cold Steve Austin would do. I liked it. I liked the segment. I thought it was good. I really find it stunning that Kofi Kingston's never got better than this, or never got that extra push to go to the top. Now, speaking of that, we got a guy that seems to get pushed down our throats, love, like, or indifferent. Alberto Del Rio, who's a great in-ring talent, but not so good on the mic, versus his former manager, Ricardo Rodriguez. This was set up by Del Rio buttering up Vicky Guerrero, who made this match, and as soon as it started, she came to the stage and said, your match for our Hell in a Cell will be Del Rio versus John Cena. What a shocker, actually. I didn't expect him back to the least Royal Rumble. From what I'm reading and understanding, his injury wasn't as bad as initially thought, and he's going to be able to come back quicker. I think they're going to use it to try and hotshot some pay-per-view ratings and pay-per-view buys. I think holding him off, even if he's healthy, to Royal Rumble would have hotshotted it even more. It would have gave you time to build up some other main event guys. But it is what it is. The distraction of them announcing that match allowed Ricardo to get a roll-up pin, which made Del Rio irate, and he eventually destroyed Ricardo, putting him in the cross arm breaker with the chair, similar to what he did to Van Dam at the pay-per-view. thus probably writing Ricardo off of TV as well as they have for Rob Van Dam. But that is what it is. Maybe Ricardo will start working as El Local more prominently and bring that character to the main show. Now, speaking of guys that probably deserve better time, more time, and a better spot on the show, Zack Ryder versus Fandango. Two guys that, much like Kofi Kingston, are the epitome of guys that WWE should have pushed a while back and haven't. Fandango was absolutely on fire coming out of WrestleMania, and Zack Ryder 2012 was just as hot as anybody is right now. I think it was more of they didn't understand what they had or what they could do with these guys, and kind of shit the bed, in my opinion, on these two. I think they could do much better. Fandango picks up the win. I'd like to see them do a little bit more with both the guys. I think they have a great following, a lot of fans cheering for them. Why not build on that? Why not make these guys Intercontinental Champion, U.S. Champion material? You know, high mid-card, sometimes main event guys. You know, for every Stone Cold Steve Austin, there was an X-Pac, a Billy Gunn, guys, D'Lo Brown, The Godfather, guys that didn't necessarily make it to the top, but kept them spots right under and made the show just as interesting when they were on. Just my opinion. Now, coming off of that, we had two guys that also fit that role, the Real Americans, Antonio Cesaro and Jack Swagger versus the Great Khali and Santino Marella. Basically a carbon copy of the match from Battleground. I believe the only reason they put this on here was so everybody could see Antonio Cesaro do the giant swing on Great Khali. One of the most impressive feats of strength on any wrestling show I've ever seen. This guy's an absolute monster. He's a beast. I don't understand why he's not in a world title picture at this point. Antonio Cesaro could be pushed to the moon with believability and credibility that hardly anybody else has. They pick up the win with the giant swing. After the match, he puts Hornswoggle in the giant swing, or shall we say little person swing, and even the fans ate that up. I mean, I think the giant swing is going to be the move that makes everybody stand up and notice that Antonio Cesaro is a real big game player and could be a future world champion. Coming off of that, a former world champion, The Miz, was doing a Miz TV. He was going to interview his own self, which brought out the Wyatt family, which he managed to get away from. But I dig what they're going to do with this. I like the idea of Bray Wyatt going after The Miz. They're going to play up on TV anytime that Bray Wyatt gets the upper hand on Miz, and Miz is a former world champion that's pretty much done anything there is to do in WWE. So this can only help Bray Wyatt's character, and I think this is really what his character needs. He needs that little bit of a serious push to it, because it's kind of petering in its interest level. Speaking of that, another three-man group that's kind of leveled out as well, The Shield, who were absolutely as hot as anybody could be a few months back. Ever since joining the association, the federation, whatever the hell they're calling the corporation now, the Shield's been nothing but hired bodyguards, where before it was all about chaos. You didn't know when they would strike. You didn't know who they were going to strike. They gave the frenetic promos saying what they were going to do and how dominant they are. Now they're just there to do Triple H's bidding, which on this night was to wrestle Daniel Bryan, Cody Rhodes, and Goldust. Shield initially gets DQ'd when Ambrose hits Bryan with a chair. Triple H restarts the match as no disqualification, which prompts Orton's interference. The Shield pick up the win. They start to beat down the three guys, which brings out the Big Show. Big Show comes out. Everybody leaves. It's him and Triple H in the ring. Show. KO punches Triple H. Something they've been building for a couple weeks with the crying show and the emotional insecurities. Thought it was a decent payoff. I'd like to see where they're going to go from this. I have a sneaky suspicion that they're going to switch the Daniel Bryan push to a Big Show push, because I think for whatever reason the powers that be have more faith in Show than they do Daniel Bryan. What I'm thinking their opinion is, not mine. I think Daniel Bryan absolutely could be the biggest wrestler in the world. No pun intended, Big Show. But I thought the ending was good. I like to see that the heel faction, the corporation, whatever you're calling them, I don't think they have an official name yet. The Authority, I think, is what they've been calling them. I like to see that the faces are getting one over on them finally. Good way to end the show, nice and tight. It tied together the beginning of the show with the end, tied up some loose ends in there. But overall, I thought this was a decent show, and we're going to go right into our ratings. Now, if you've watched the show in the past, you know we have a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. A 1's a Great Khali, 2's a Heath Slater, 3's a Randy Orton, 4's a CM Punk, 5's a Daniel Bryan. I'm giving this a 3 on Randy Orton. Some things to write home that we liked, some things not so much. The 6-woman diva match was there. Nothing good, nothing bad. Ryder vs. Fandango, I wish got more time. Ziggler vs. Sandow and the Real Americans vs. Khali and Santino, while better than their pay-per-view matches, were just rehashes of the pay-per-view. Again, the same problems I mentioned with the Heyman guys and CM Punk's feud. It's getting stale to me at this point. Not a bad show. Much better show than the pay-per-view was, but still not on par with some of what we've seen in the past year or so of wrestling on Raw. But basically, that's all I have to say about this. My name is George Coles. It's been another episode of Heel Heat.